Hi guys, I'm Katie Roome from Periapsis Press, and today I am with Kit Sun Cheah, who wrote Saga of the Storybreaker, and this is just the first one. He currently has a campaign for the second half of the saga. Hello, thank you for meeting with me.
Thanks for having me here.
So we did a written interview that was posted on my website about a year ago when this one first came out, right? Is that correct?
Yep,
You've been busy.
to say the least.
So how many books are there total in the saga?
6 books.
And they're all already written, right?
Yes.
Wow. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So would you maybe just give a little introduction for people who don't know or aren't familiar with the series?
Saga The Storybreaker is a cyberpunk cultivation novel. It blends high tech with high fantasy, so to speak. It is a story of Li Ming, a young man who aims to be a Biaohang, an armed escort who wanders the world protecting the innocents and fighting monsters and bandits. The Swordbreaker in the title refers to his ancestral weapon, a swordbreaker that is handed down to him from his father and grandfather. Li Ming dreams of being a martial immortal, to gain immortality by gaining experience and the wealth to follow immortality treatments and become biologically immortal. And he aims to do this by working as a Biaohang, taking on jobs, fighting monsters and bad guys and whatnot. Then, in the course of the first 3 books, he discovers his dreams aren't what he thought they would be. He weren't quite what he thought they were. He gets embroiled in politics at the 5 states and 10 corporations. He gets sucked into various schemes and plans. And while he survives the end of it, his dreams don't. So books 4 to 6, and in books 4 to 6, he has asked himself, what is he really going to do with his life?
Awesome. Last time we talked a bit about what it means that it's a cultivation novel, because it is a cultivation novel in the real sense of a cultivation novel and not sort of the bastardization
Mhm.
of what cultivation novels have sort of become, progression fantasy and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I got to elaborate a bit on this. It's such a pet peeve of mine.
I
Just
know.
to go on further. Okay. In the cultivation genre, the idea is that various characters become more powerful through cultivation. And this cultivation is very loosely based on Buddhist and Taoist practices. They sit in some place quiet, they meditate, they circulate qi, they drink exotic potions and substances, that kind of thing. Now, that's just a mechanic, or even just a trope. It's just character does this, character becomes more powerful, and character goes on to beat up more bad guys, rinse and repeat. It's predictable, and it's boring. In the real world, cultivation is a translation of the Chinese term "siu," and "siu" is actually tries to communicate a very complex term. Now, in English language, every word has a specific meaning, but in Chinese, a word refers to a concept. The way the word "siu" is written, it combines 3 different radicals. Think of a radical as a part of a character. When combined, the radicals communicate the meaning of the character. So the characters of Siu is composed of the radical for a tuft of hair, 3 broad lines, a man, and a very interesting character. This character was called Tiao. Today, that this word Tiao refers to a journey by water, but originally it referred to another character, and that word meant purification by water. So if you combine these three radicals together, you have an image of a man purifying himself in water to gain longevity and wisdom. The longevity and wisdom part is implied here through the three tufts of hair. Because what this tuft of hair represents is someone with long hair, long white hair, a beard or long ponytail, as in a kung fu movie. And how do you get long hair? By living long enough to get white hair. And what does this mean? It means that you've lived a long time and presumably gained a lot of wisdom along the way. So to actually understand this term, you need to be able to understand what the radicals actually mean and what they imply. So from this, you look at it this way, cultivation, Siu, actually means purification. Purification of mind, body, and spirit. And that's how the word is actually used today in the Chinese language. Like Chinese priests, Taoist priests say Siu Tao. Buddhist priests say Siu Fo. When they refer to self-cultivation, they say Siu Xing. And in the secular term, we have the words Siu Yang and Siu Yang, which means, well, to cultivate yourself, to become more refined, cultured, nurturing, caring. So when we see Siu, imagine it's more than just becoming more powerful. It means becoming more of yourself. It means to remove everything that is not you, to elevate yourself to a higher state of being. And yeah, in the process, gain abilities and seem superhuman in the process.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how your character develops? Because obviously, we're not starting with years and years of wisdom, white hair, and super powerful.
Yeah. Well, Li Ming begins a story at the age of 20. For those of you who just joined in, Li Ming is a military veteran. He just finished 2 years of obligatory military service. He has some combat experience. He has a high degree of training, but he's only 20 years old. He doesn't have anywhere near the wisdom that age implies, as in Chinese culture. So that story is him gaining the wisdom to understand what exactly was going on in this world. For, in this case, a significant portion of his training comes from martial arts practice. Martial arts is a significant component of the story. But when you think of martial arts training here, it's not just him practicing this technique over and over and over again. He practices primarily the martial art of Wu Xing Quan, which is the analog of Xing Quan in our world. Xing Quan is one of the ancient Chinese internal martial arts. And one of the cool things about internal martial arts is that it combines both physical training and cultivation. So when you practice, you're not just practicing a technique over and over again. It's also moving meditation. You go deep into yourself to sense your balance, your weight distribution, muscular tension, movement, and so on and so forth. And in Li Ming's case, he also senses the flow of qi throughout his body, and he circulates the qi through his body. This is how he gains more power by A, developing proper body mechanics, and B, by refining his spiritual energy, so to speak. And at the more metaphysical level, by circulating energy through his vital organs into his brain, and to his dantian, he becomes, we could say, more perceptive, more intelligent, but it's a very subtle effect. It's something that is not explicitly called out, but it's there if you know how to look up for it, if you know how to look for it. The real character development comes from him going through his adventures, thinking about what's going on, and trying to look beyond the surface. Like if he takes a contract from a corporation, you think, is it really what the corporation wants? Is it just about going someplace and escorting so and so? Because is there more to it than just a simple escort job? And this bases book 3, incidentally. Book 3 begins with what appears to be a simple escort job. Then it goes off the rails dramatically.
So I've only read the first book, which was fantastic. So,
Yeah.
and I hope to soon have time to get the rest of the series under my belt.
Mhm.
Some of the monsters are just, well, they're all a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Can you tell us if there is, like, if throughout the series you have a favorite monster, or if you have a favorite antagonist, like that would bring out good things in Li Ming?
Okay, well, that's such a two-part question. From a monster perspective, I'd say the favorite monster is the Tieto. It's actually an original creation. And in English, it is very imaginatively named Ironhead. So called because its skull is as hard as iron. In book 1, you may have noticed is a garden variety monster. It's not dangerous to humans directly, but it's a goat monster. It grazes on everything in sight. Leave it alone long enough and it'll eat you out of house and home. So it's got to go. I think what they're trying to communicate with this is that the monsters aren't just there to harm humans. They're part of a wider ecosystem. They may not harm people directly unless they're provoked, but indirectly they can still cause harm to people. And as the series progresses, you see that some of the tension between humans and monsters is caused by humans invading monster habitats and vice versa. And that that is something that modern hunters and ecologists are concerned about. I would think that way back in ancient history, it's also something that ancients thought about. Like essentially, the Taoists teach don't do any harm to others. The Buddhists also teach that. But if you're going into someone else's home and you eat up all their food, you may be harming them directly, but you're still causing them harm indirectly. The thing is, if a monster can do that, so can a human. So if a human goes to a monster's habitat, like a forest, they raise it to the ground, they turn it into farmland. Well, then where's the monster got to go? It's got nowhere to live. It's got nothing to eat. So of course, it'll go hunting for food elsewhere, and that means it'll go into human lands. And that's one part of the dilemma posed at Tieto. Another part of it is that, well, the monsters may seem unintelligent. They operate by instinct, but it's only on the surface. Later on in book 6, you'll probably see another side of Tieto that is only implied in book 1. Now,
Hey
as
guys,
for
sorry, I'm wondering if we're having some trouble. I keep having glitches.
Okay, what was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about people going into monsters' habitat.
Yep. Okay. So Suppose a monster lives in the forest, and the humans decide to expand into the forest. They cut down the forest, they burn it down, they turn it into a farmland or into a new housing estate or a resort. They may not harm the monster directly, but now the monster has nowhere to live, it has no food to eat, so what else can it do? The only thing it can do is to invade what was now human territory and try to survive. And so it's not deliberately trying to hurt people, but humans left in with no other option. So with the Tieto and similar monsters, I'm trying to communicate a sense of a wider ecosystem. That these monsters may just want to be left alone, but humans won't let them. And sometimes there are some monsters just plain evil. So some humans want to be left alone, but monsters invade their land anyway. So managing this tension is something that Biao Hang will do. As for human antagonists, I would say the most significant antagonist I can talk about for now is Night Spear from Book 3. In Book 3, Li Ming and his comrades are hired for an escort mission. Then along comes a terrorist named Night Spear. Night Spear almost assassinates their client. Li Ming and his comrades manage to delay him long enough for the police to arrive, forcing Night Spear to retreat. Li Ming and his comrades are then ordered to assassinate Night Spear. It's in direct violation of every law known to man, but the corporation is so powerful that they make the law. Now, in traditional cultivation stories, the story arc is predictable. Li Ming and his friends to undergo a martial pilgrimage, they cultivate, become more powerful to cultivate some more, and so on and so forth, until they can find Night Spear in honorable combat. That's not gonna happen with this book, though. With Night Spear wanted to create an antagonist who is essentially a demigod. No human can stand one-on-one combat with him. He's a one-man army. He can obliterate everything in sight. And the only thing stopping him from destroying everyone from the get-go is that he thinks of himself as a freedom fighter. He doesn't want to hurt innocent civilians. So if he just want to kill everyone, he could just walk into the building and blow it up with him inside. He'll survive, everybody else won't. But it will cause massive collateral damage, and he doesn't want that. So he wants to be surgical. He only kills people he thinks is worth killing. And that's his only weakness. So Li Ming and his friends must figure out how to defeat Night Spear without A, being killed by themselves, and B, without destroying the country that they're supposed to protect, and C, while pleasing their client. So instead of fighting hard, they have to fight smart. And this is where Li Ming has to think about how to defeat Night Spear using strategy, not just raw, overwhelming power. And along the way, Li Ming also comes face to face with the ideology running through the rivers and lakes. The idea of chasing power at all costs and where it truly leads. And that will inform the rest of the series from books 4 to 6.
Awesome. One of the things that you touched on was, especially when you're talking about the monsters, how rich your setting is. You have a lot of things feeding into and informing the way that Li-Ming's environment plays into the plot, and the world. Like you have the habitat and how that would influence things happening as far as like monsters, and then you have these political things that are happening. The both like the Chinese history that informs certain politics and cultivation, and then you also have like the cyber tech that futuristic angle. You have a lot of moving pieces. Do you want to talk about them at all? Like how? Go ahead.
Any specific questions about them?
I should make it more specific. How would you order them, I guess, in terms of like importance to your story, like because you have such a rich well to draw from to make this beautiful setting. Like I know that like Chinese language is really important to the book. I think you talk about that is it in the afterword? Do you have an afterword or is it a forward? Can't remember now.
Probably in block piece, actually.
Oh, could be.
Well, when I started the world building process for this series, I prioritized Chinese culture and language. It would inform every single aspect of the story, from the environment to the characters to the technology. What I wanted to do was to craft an authentic feeling world that is drawn from Chinese culture, but not necessarily a mirror of Chinese culture, if that makes sense. It should feel like when you think of China, you think of a single country, right? Historically, that wasn't so. For many periods in Chinese history, China was not a single entity, but multiple entities, multiple states, multiple kingdoms. And at some point in history, I think during the 1920s and 30s, there was essentially a central government and lots of tiny fiefdoms run by warlords and bandits. So the first thing I want to do is create something that felt exotic. And since the modern China we know today is a single entity, I want to go back in history and create a China-like continent that has a shared culture and language, but many different political systems. And so that gave rise to the idea of the 5 states and 10 corporations. It's an allusion to the 5 states and 10 kingdoms era in Chinese history. But in this case, instead of 10 kingdoms, you have 10 corporations. 10 mega corporations that are above the law, that are as powerful as, or if not even more powerful than legitimate governments. And then we have the basis of a cyberpunk story. So with the 5 states and 10 corporations, decided what will each of the 5 states actually look like. So we have the main, we have Bao'an and Tai'an and the main country where Li-Ming operates in, which is based on Taiwan. We have the Yue homelands, which is based on Mongolia and represents the culture that came before the Xia in the setting. There's a Nanguang Federation, which is based on southern China. There's the Central Plains, which is based on the real Central Plains of China, but more monsters. And we have the Northeast. The northeastern provinces in China are also a real location. Here, the Northeast is technically an independent state. And I say technically. In reality, well, you may have noticed that every country in the in the canton of Seattle speaks the same language and shares the same currency, and that's deliberate. So in this case, the Northeast is the de facto protectorate of the southern states, which is the reverse of history. During the Qing dynasty, the Qing were from the northeast. And so while Beijing was the capital, the further northeast was a stronghold, ethnic stronghold. In this series, the northeast is a Rum state, was a Rum state of the former dynasty. And nobody wants the former dynasty to regain power. So, well, they're not obvious, they're not blatant about all their political measures, but it's quite clear that the Northeast is not really an independent state as the term is understood today. Now, contrast this with the Central Plains in this setting. Throughout history, Chinese warlords and kings and emperors have fought over the Central Plains because the Central Plains is the breadbasket of China. He who controls the Central Plains controls all of China. Here, no one controls the Central Plains except the merchants. So what you can see here basically what the creator is saying that's based on and inspired by Chinese history, but not a mirror of it. Rather a story of what could have been had things turned out just a little differently. And so once you had the 5 and 10 corporations, I thought about the geography. What kind of geography and what kind of climate would have made these systems possible? So the south, for example, is close to the coast and close to rivers. And because of that, it supports rice. Rice growing cultures are communal, interdependent, very family and clan oriented, for example. And so we build on from there. And since the fantasy story must throw in the monsters. So in monsters, they're suited for various environments. And so when monsters start appearing outside native environment, it becomes a plot point. Big hint there. Technology is probably the well, your screen is frozen now.
Oh,
Can you
drat.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, well, anyway, technology is probably the last thing that I planned on. And even from the start, I wanted to have magic. And then I wanted to have energy weapons because they're cool. And from there, I thought, since the whole world is informed by Chinese culture, I might as well base the technology on Chinese metaphysics. I mean, the magic and the technology in Chinese metaphysics. That is to say, the 5 elements and the 8 trigrams and elemental associations. So we have metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. This becomes the foundation for the magic system. The 8 trigrams of Chinese culture also have their own elemental associations, and so it became easy to layer the 8 trigrams and the 5 elements upon each other and create a magic system. Then it just became a matter of thinking, what qualities do these elements express, and how can they be shown in fiction? Like, take wood, for example. In wood, you have healing. You have a straight bursting force. You have the idea of roots holding soil together. It becomes a very versatile system that way. You can use wood energy for repairing items. You can also use it to blow people away using a telekinetic blast. And the same goes for all the other elements and trigrams in this magic system. And the magic system other way is you need a technology system that could replicate magic effects more predictably. Plus throw in various computers and cars and airships that are so convenient for life and storytelling. And so that was the world building process in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool how you were able to weave so many elements together to make such a unique world that feels authentically its own thing, you know? It's not simply inspired by these different elements, but like it takes them all and then becomes its own world. And I think that's really, really awesome that you were able to do that.
Thank you.
Would you say that you had any like thematic motivations behind the idea of corporation? Like if you were trying to, yeah, like if you were thinking about trying to make some sort of point with the way that they behave in their existence.
Well, in Wuxia stories, cultivation stories, and similar stories, you see a lot of times that might makes right, that wealth makes right. If you look beyond the surface, you see there's a dog-eat-dog world where, in translated English, the weaker meat and the strong do eat. That is, the weaker meat to the strong. So the idea of corporations, I wanted to reflect that. The whole world of Saga Swordbreaker is built on this idea that the strong should rule and the weak must suffer what they must. And it's reflected in every area of society, not just in the rivers and lakes. So this includes the political system, governments and corporations alike. The corporations, being so rich, can essentially dictate the rules. They decide the way things are, and even governments must bow to them. They don't possess martial power, except for the White Tiger Private Military Corporation. But the wealth they hold and the degree of influence they hold is power all within itself. So in a sense, the idea of the corporations ties in the overall theme of the pursuit of power and how it's used and the effects of using that power. Okay, I should probably explain that in traditional Chinese thinking, in the teachings of the Tao Te Ching, the ideal ruler is one who is invisible. The population does not feel his hand. It's as if he doesn't exist. If he does act, it feels subtle or natural and in line with the way. With the 10 corporations, they are everywhere. You can feel them. The advertisements everywhere, their products everywhere, and in the rivers and lakes, they are the main customers. They will offer you a golden contract. They will offer something like $1,000,000 for some seemingly simple contract. It sounds like a great deal, but if you take it, you become their slave.
Sorry, did you freeze there?
Okay. Did you get my last?
I think so.
Okay. So if what I want to do was to provide a deeper layer of meaning to a reader who understands the classics, that this world is fundamentally opposed to how the Chinese thought the world should be run. And there's a source of Li Ming's inner conflict. He knows that what's happening isn't right. It violates the classics, it violates his own conscience. And yet, he's still a part of that world. So can he, in good faith, continue to perpetuate this world?
Kind of a question we all face a little bit, even though we're not quite as embroiled, I should say. Our goal isn't necessarily always to reach the heights that Li Ming was, but we still have to juggle that. How much do we allow and participate in both like corporation and government overreach?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you also about how this is a little bit of a direction change, I think. How the like the religious elements were like, maybe it's not such a big change, big topic change, because you come to your story with the idea that spiritual things matter in life. How would you say your story delivers that kind of a message?
That's a very interesting question here. And what I wanted to do was well, as I said earlier, the story is informed by Chinese philosophy, civilization, culture. On matters of religion and spirituality in the series, did the same thing. In the modern world, we're used to thinking that religion is a separate sphere of life, separation of church and state. You go to church, then you go do whatever things else in life, and so on and so forth. Something like that, anyway. It's a very high level view. In Chinese thinking, though, is not religion and civil life are not separated. They are intertwined. The idea of metaphysics in Chinese culture is that it is beyond the physical, but still part of the physical. I mean, you may have heard of feng shui, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one example. You arrange your physical environment to create subtle metaphysical benefits. In the world of Saga The Storybreaker, we have martial arts, the internal martial arts. And earlier I alluded to it, so I'm just going to make it more explicit now. In the internal martial arts is not just martial arts. It's martial arts, it's meditation, it is medical practice, and it is metaphysics. So when you practice the internal martial arts, you're doing all this all at once. For Li Ming's practice in general, what he wants to do is to be more than just an excellent martial artist. He wants to be a good man. And so that leads to him studying referencing the classics, or his own teachers referring to the classics as well. His vision of being a warrior is to be a protector. And that is also in line with how the word warrior is written in Chinese. The word for all things martial in Chinese is called wu. And the word for wu is written with the radicals to stop the weapon. He lives, though, in a society where martial arts is just a means of power. And that creates a lot of tension within him. And to resolve the tension, he goes back to the classics, to the teachings of the sages and his teachers, his grandmasters and masters. So he falls back on religion and spirituality as an answer to what he sees as the growing corruption of the world. So you can say it's very important to him in this regard, and in the story in general. It influences how he thinks, feels, and acts, especially in starting in book 4 onwards, when he finally meets his grandmaster.
Awesome.
I mean, does that answer that question?
How would you? Yeah, I was just going to ask, without giving too much away, how does meeting his grandmaster like change things for him?
Okay, I can say this. For the entire series, up to that point, Li Ming wanted to be an immortal, a Xian, the kind of person who would basically live forever, as long as he can afford medical treatments. His grandmaster, on the other hand, is a human, a regular human, mostly. Grandmaster An is in his 80s, but when he moves better than someone in his 20s. He is short, he is slight, but he's untouchable. He doesn't seem powerful, but no one can touch him. And you might think that someone so old may not much hair, but he has a full head of black hair somehow. And
So he doesn't
The
have
most-
white hair.
he doesn't, even at such an advanced age, and without going through any special medical treatment either. And the most important part about him is that he's not afraid of death. He knows he must die someday, and that's perfectly all right with him. He's accepted that. And until the day comes, he's content with passing on his knowledge to the next generation. And so this causes Li Ming to wonder, what exactly does he want out of immortality? Everyone wants to be immortal, sure, but why? He realizes that he has to ask himself that question. Why? Is it because everyone is doing it? Because there's some benefit in it? Is there even a point to being immortal?
You're questioning the whole premise of cultivation fantasy.
Yep. I mean, look, a lot of authors out there don't do it. It's just the other characters are kind of immortal because it's expected a genre. But I'm not satisfied with that. So I want to pose this question. Why? Why do you want to live forever? And well, beyond that, in Taoism, immortality may be the goal, but it's also a byproduct. It is the outcome of harmonizing yourself with the way. If you not enter into harmony with the way, then you cannot become an immortal. So, what in this series, the Saga The Storybreaker, people can become immortal without ever having practiced Taoism. Is there a cost to that, though? Beyond just monetary costs? That's one of the implied questions through the series. What else? Oh, yeah. Let's just say that from the result of his encounter with his grandmaster, Li Ming decides to embark on a different course in life.
Is he still going to be fighting monsters, though? Like,
Plenty. Human and otherwise.
Just want to check what time it is. Okay. Would you like to talk a little bit about some of the other works that you've written and how the Saga of the Swordbreaker sort of compares to those?
Okay. Before Saga the Swordbreaker, there was, well, the Babylon series. I think it's probably the closest to Saga the Swordbreaker, strangely enough. The Babylon series is cyberpunk horror. In a world ruled by false gods, street samurai Yuri Yamamoto must protect the innocent from the depredations of monsters, cultists, and other horrors. Tonally, they're radically different. In Saga the Swordbreaker, you have a functional world that's corrupt on the inside. In the Babylon series, the world is already corrupt and is going to hell. Literally. Yuri Yamamoto is a Christian who studied Zen. Li Ming follows the three teachings of Chinese culture: Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, although they're not explicitly stated as such. Beyond those, though, you see many similarities. Martial arts and spirituality, strategy, higher technology, this idea of fighting back against corruption. In Babylon, this combat is expressed externally. In Saga the Swordbreaker, there's a lot more internal conflict going on. Okay. And as the TDWs mentioned, Dara Bomo, right? Recently I published Dara Bomo. That's from my latest novel. It's a diary novel. It's told through a series of diary entries written by a Tatila Bomo. A Bomo is a traditional Malay shaman, but in this part of the world, Bomo is equated to black magic. The story conceit is that one fine day, the police discover a locked apartment with a dead body inside it. There's no identification, no passport, no driver's license, no identification card. All they have to go on is a set of diaries. So Inspector Ibrahim is tasked with translating the diaries so they can identify the deceased. And in this diary is a record of the slow degradation and corruption. The idea with this book is to demonstrate what happens when you pursue power at all costs without regards for your soul. In this sense, it also reflects Saga the Swordbreaker. In this case, the diary of Bomo is informed by Malay folk tale lore and mythology and Singaporean culture. It's a lot less violent, but it's a lot more psychological as well.
Sure.
And those are the more recent stories that can compare to Saga the Swordbreaker.
Awesome. Yeah, you did a really nice job of talking about the sort of threads that weave through all of your stories. That's really cool.
Thank you.
All right. So, last thing I'll ask about Saga the Swordbreaker, just kind of my usual wrap it up question, which is like, what do you hope that your readers take away from the series?
I hope that you take away a rich world based on Chinese culture, philosophy, and thinking. A world that is informed by martial ethics and philosophy. A world that is a broken mirror of our own. One that is at once more decayed and grander than ours. I like, for Cultivation readers in particular, to see the full potential of the genre. More than just, beating up bad guys, getting more power and beating up bad guys. It could become a medium for thinking about things like culture, philosophy, ethics, virtue. I like readers to learn a bit more about Chinese civilization in general, and martial ethics in particular, and how different people in different societies think, and at the same time, how they're still universals across humanity. Ideas of good and evil, of standing up to evil, of protecting the innocent, of choosing the high road over the low road, so to speak. And well, I've woven his story as best as I could, and I hope that readers will be able to take away something from all that.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, I've only read the first one, but I feel like I can start to see that the threads of that already. So I am fully intending to read more of the series. Can
Thank you.
you tell people about your current campaign?
All right. The current campaign is titled Saga The Storybreaker, Invincible Under Heaven. It follows Li Ming's story from book 4 through to book 6. Covers the second half of the series, bringing the tale to its epic conclusion. It's got martial arts, magic, mayhem, everything you come to expect from the first 3 books, and a lot more. We have Li Ming's martial pilgrimage to learn more by martial art and study under the Grandmaster. There's a martial arts tournament fought for the highest stakes. And for the conclusion, we have a battle against a band of terrorists who seek to burn down the 5 states and 10 corporations. We got monsters, got devil cultivators, got gunfights, martial arts showdowns. Everything you come to expect from a Cultivation fantasy novel series with guns and high tech. And at its heart, it's also a meditation on the nature of power. What is the nature of power? What happens when you pursue it? How do you use it? Why do you want to use it? It's the same themes woven throughout books 1 to 3 and taken to its final conclusion. And I can say this. In Western fiction, you see that the answer to the idea of overly powerful corporation governments is to burn them all down. Here, the solution is found in Chinese thinking. And let's just say something that is both unexpected and yet entirely within the Chinese framework. So you'll have something surprising. So yeah, so I hope readers will find something both surprising and novel here in what I'm trying to do.
I'm really looking forward to backing it and reading more. Links are in the description, guys. I have a link to the campaign, links to Cheah's Twitter and website, and as well as the original written interview that we did about a year ago, if you're interested in hearing more. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to conclude with?
Please support indie authors and buy this campaign.
Yes.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a great night.
Thanks. You too. All of you.